This lecture is about goal theory, with a specific focus on how individuals set goals and are motivated to achieve them, and in particular in an academic setting. Carol Dweck articulated one of the first versions of achievement goal theory, which focused on purposes or reasons people have for pursuing competence. So what were the main types of achievement goals in Dweck's theory? The first was a learning goal, which is all about mastery and competence of new skills. The second was a performance goal, which was about obtaining evaluations of competence from others. Dweck posited that there were two main motivational patterns. The first she called adaptive. Adaptive motivational individuals are challenge-seeking and they persist in attaining personally valued achievement goals. Whereas the second pattern is called maladaptive. These individuals are challenge-avoiding and they show low persistence in pursuit of personally valued achievement goals. Now, how are the two motivational patterns related to the achievement goals? Adaptive patterns correspond to learning goals, and also some performance goals, but only when self-efficacy is high. Whereas the maladaptive pattern corresponds to performance goals, in particular when self-efficacy is low. So how do goals impact effort and persistence? Well, effort and persistence vary depending on the dominant goal and efficacy. How do effort and persistence vary with performance goals? With high perceived ability, generally individuals hold a mastery orientation. With low perceived ability, generally individuals hold a helpless orientation. Goals can shift to avoid looking bad, and use of self-protective but self-defeating strategies are used here as well, such as procrastination, creating excuses, and generally finding ways to avoid putting forth behavior. How do effort and persistence vary with learning goals? Again, it depends on perceived ability. With high perceived ability, individuals will still hold a mastery orientation. And this is the ideal situation: learning goals and high perceived ability. How about low perceived ability with learning goals? Here you're still going to have a mastery orientation, and these individuals are likely to persist through challenges. However, it's important to note that people must perceive or believe that they're at least able to learn. And now we'll explore how goals impact task engagement. And there is an abundance of evidence to suggest that goals do in fact impact engagement. Learning goals generally lead to students being more self-regulated in learning. That is, they monitor and evaluate and plan their own learning better than performance goals. They also use deeper, more meaningful learning strategies. Now, how about performance goals? Students here are more likely to rely on shallow or rote learning strategies. And so obviously, the ideal type of goal are learning goals. Now let's look at the effects of goals on task preferences, specifically performance goals. Challenge is preferred when ability perceptions are high. However, when ability perceptions are in doubt, people attempt to conceal or protect their ability, and they do so by selecting very easy or very difficult tasks. They select easy ones so that they will look good in front of others. Remember, here they're trying to, with performance goals, they're trying to gain a positive evaluation. However, they may also select very difficult tasks, so they'll have an excuse when they fail. They may say, "Oh, well, it's not my fault I failed. I picked the hardest task there was. It has nothing to do with my ability." That way they'll receive a less negative evaluation. They may also devalue the task and say, "This is not even worth pursuing in the first place." And maybe it is, but they're protecting their self-worth. And it's important to note that very low ability perceptions can lead to learned helplessness, which is giving up trying to learn altogether, which is the worst possible scenario. And then finally, the threat of public mistakes can lead to avoidance. Now, how about on the other side? How do learning goals impact task preferences? Well, individuals with learning goals are willing to take challenges that will increase competence or skills. And this will happen even if perceived ability is low, as long as they perceive that they do have the ability to learn if they put in enough effort. Eliot added a distinction to the goal theory framework, and this was the approach avoidance distinction. Approach and avoidance refer to the valence of the underlying motivation. These include approach, which is guided by anticipated positive desired outcomes, whereas avoidance is guided by anticipated negative undesirable outcomes. That is, you're trying to avoid something negative happening. With the approach avoidance valence in mind, what are Eliot's 3 goal categories? The first is mastery goals. This is developing personal or task-related competence, just as you would see in Dweck's. However, where you really get the distinction is with performance goals. These can be seen as performance approach goals, which is attaining normative competence, trying to look good in front of others or trying to gain some kind of positive evaluation, versus performance avoidance goals. This is avoiding a normative incompetence. And individuals with performance avoidance goals try to not look bad. And this is why they may do things like pick easy tasks or pick a really difficult task, and then when they fail, they have an excuse for doing so. Or maybe they'll even procrastinate. And then when they fail, they'll say, oh, it's just because I waited till the last minute, not because I'm not able to do it. And an important note, the 2x2 framework includes mastery avoidance goals. However, this is still conceptually murky and controversial. It hasn't bared out in the data. And finally, we'll discuss Mayer's goal framework. He identified 4 categories of goals. They are task goals, which are very similar to learning goals, ego goals, which are very similar to performance goals, extrinsic rewards, and this is somebody who's trying to search for some reward for performing a task, and then finally, social solidarity goals, which is a really important addition. And this is the purpose to demonstrate commitment and faithfulness to others. And this occurs when a child tries to please somebody. Maybe it's the peers, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's parents. And social solidarity goals can have negative or positive effects. If your friends are oppositional to school and you're trying to please them, well, you may become oppositional to school as well, and this could hinder learning and motivation. However, if you're trying to please a teacher, this could actually improve motivation because you want to show them that you want to please them and do good work. So as I said, these social solidarity goals can be both good and bad. However, you can leverage them in the classroom, and you can do this by using cooperative learning groups or teams. Now, properly structured groups can foster peer support for learning and individual achievement. However, you have to be very careful to group students effectively. Such groups have a group incentive, and that is a payoff for working together, such as a grade or other goal. These groups also have individual accountability. A lack of this can reduce engagement. And finally, these groups have an equal opportunity for success. Now, research strongly suggests that cooperative groups lead to greater achievement and foster improvements in interpersonal interactions. So, what are the teaching implications from our goal theory lecture? Well, first of all, mastery approach goals are ideal. If you can leverage these, you'll have optimal learning. However, this is not always the case. You're not always able to get every student having a mastery approach, in which case a performance approach is not always bad either. A performance approach goal. Now, it's also important to recognize that you can have a combination of goals. You can have performance approach and mastery approach goals for the same task, and these combinations are starting to be researched more, and these can be really effective. Now, what you want to avoid, and this is my second point here, are these performance avoidance goals. These are bad, especially when combined with low self-efficacy, because this will often spiral to learned helplessness. And finally, you can use cooperative groups effectively to facilitate positive social solidarity goals. Just remember that if you're going to use cooperative groups, that you must structure them effectively using the components I discussed in the previous couple slides.